Hansel and Gretel. Once upon a time, there lived a poor woodcutter with his second wife and his 2 children, Hansel and Gretel, in a small hut at the edge of a dense forest. They were very poor, and hunger followed them like a shadow. Each day grew harder than the last. One year, famine struck the land. There was no more food left in the house. One night, as Hansel and Gretel slept, the woman whispered to her husband, "We have nothing left to eat. Tomorrow, you must take the children deep into the forest and leave them there. They won't find their way back, and then we'll only have 2 mouths to feed." The woodcutter groaned, "No, I can't do that to my own children. That would be too cruel." But the woman refused to listen. She scolded and pressured him, saying they would all starve if he didn't obey. At last, weak and desperate, the man agreed. Hansel, who had not yet fallen asleep, overheard everything. When the house was quiet, he crept outside and filled his pockets with shiny white pebbles he found glowing in the moonlight. He thought, "I'll leave a trail to find our way back." The next morning, the man woke the children. "Come now, children. We are going into the forest to gather wood." They walked deep into the woods. Along the way, Hansel paused now and then to drop a pebble behind him. When they reached the heart of the forest, the father lit a fire and said, "Stay here and rest. Your mother and I are going deeper to chop wood. We'll come back for you soon." Hansel and Gretel waited and waited, but no one returned. Darkness fell, and the wind howled through the trees. Gretel began to cry, but Hansel said, "Don't be afraid, Gretel. When the moon rises, we'll follow the pebbles home." Sure enough, when the moon came up, the white pebbles sparkled like stars, showing them the way. After a long walk, they arrived home. Their father was overjoyed, but the stepmother was furious. Soon after Hansel and Gretel returned home, hunger threatened again. This time, the stepmother spoke more harshly. "Once was enough. We must take them into the forest again, deeper this time. If not, we will all starve." The woodcutter was heartbroken, but once again, he gave in. Hansel wanted to gather pebbles again, but the door was locked, and he couldn't go outside. So instead, he crumbled the last piece of dry bread and hid the crumbs in his pocket, thinking, "This time, I'll leave a trail of breadcrumbs." Early the next morning, the father led the children into the woods, even deeper than before. Along the way, Hansel dropped the crumbs bit by bit behind him. When they reached a clearing, the father lit another fire and said, "Stay here, children. Your mother and I will go gather wood and return soon." But again, the children waited in vain. Night fell, and no one returned. Hansel comforted Gretel, "When the moon rises, we'll follow the breadcrumb trail home." But when the moonlight came, there were no crumbs left. Forest birds had eaten them all. Gretel burst into tears. Hansel was deeply worried, but tried to stay calm. "We'll find our way somehow. Don't be afraid." They wandered through the forest for 3 days. There was nothing to eat but berries. Tired, hungry, and hopeless, they stumbled on through the trees. But on the morning of the fourth day, they caught a strange scent, something sweet and warm, like fresh-baked treats. They followed the smell and discovered a beautiful little cottage made entirely of gingerbread, candy, and sugar. The roof was lined with peppermint, the windows were made of clear sugar, and the walls of frosted cookies. Gretel cried out, "Can we have a taste?" Hansel broke off a bit of the cookie wall, while Gretel licked the sugar window. Suddenly, a hoarse voice called from inside, "Who's nibbling on my house?" The children froze, but then the door opened, and out stepped an old woman. She looked kind and smiled warmly. "Dear children, come inside. You must be tired from your long journey. I have warm beds and good food for you." Overjoyed, Hansel and Gretel entered. They were given hot soup, sweet cakes, milk, and soft beds to sleep in. It felt like paradise. But they didn't know the old woman was actually a wicked witch who lured children in so she could eat them. The next morning, while Hansel and Gretel were still asleep, the witch, who was really a monstrous creature that devoured children, rubbed her hands together and cackled. "These plump little ones will feed me for a week." She seized Hansel, dragged him outside, and locked him in a cage. He shouted and struggled, but it was no use. Then she turned to Gretel, "And you, lazy girl, into the kitchen. Cook and clean. I'm going to fatten up your brother, and when he's nice and plump, I'll cook and eat him." From that day on, every morning, the witch fed Hansel delicious meals, cakes, meats, and milk. But Gretel got only crusts of bread and was made to work all day like a servant. Each morning, the witch came to the cage and called, "Hansel, stick out your finger so I can see how fat you are." But Hansel, knowing the witch was blind, cleverly held out a small chicken bone instead of his finger. She felt it and, thinking he was still skinny, grew impatient. Weeks passed, and the witch grew tired of waiting. Finally, she shouted, "Fat or thin, I'm going to cook you tomorrow." She ordered Gretel to fetch water and start heating the oven. The witch prepared the baking oven and chuckled with glee. Then she said, "Look into the oven and see if it's hot enough." But Gretel, who saw through the witch's trick, knew the old woman meant to shove her in. So she played dumb. "I don't know how. Could you show me how to look?" The witch growled, "Stupid goose. Fine, I'll do it myself." As she bent over to peer inside, Gretel quickly gave her a mighty push and slammed the oven door shut. The witch screamed and thrashed, but no one came to save her. She was burned alive in her own oven. Gretel ran to the cage, unlocked it, and set Hansel free. Overjoyed, he hugged his sister tightly. "Gretel, you saved my life." After the witch had been burned, Hansel and Gretel searched the gingerbread house for food. But then they found a locked room. Inside were chests filled with gold, pearls, and glittering jewels. Hansel exclaimed, "If we take these home, Father will never have to worry about being poor again." He filled his pockets with gems. Gretel gathered diamonds and pearls into her apron. Then they left the gingerbread house and began their journey home. At first, they were lost in the forest. But soon, they came to a lake where a white duck appeared. Gretel said, "We can't both ride on the duck's back at once. I'll go first, then you come." The gentle duck carried them one at a time across the water. They kept walking, through strange paths and deep woods. At last, they began to recognize familiar places. They realized they were close to home. They ran toward the little hut they once knew. Their father was sitting outside the hut, his head bowed low. His face was lined with sorrow and regret. Since the day he abandoned his children, he had not known a moment of peace. The wicked stepmother had died not long ago. When he saw Hansel and Gretel, he sprang up, tears streaming down his cheeks. "My children, you're alive." Hansel and Gretel embraced him, then poured out the treasure onto the floor, gems, gold, and diamonds from the witch's house. From that day on, they lived in joy. No more hunger, no more fear. Hansel and Gretel grew up safely, loved by their kind father, in a home filled with warmth. Hansel and Gretel teaches us several important life lessons. Sibling love is priceless. Hansel always looked out for his sister, and Gretel bravely saved her brother from the witch. Courage and cleverness can overcome evil. Even though they were small and helpless, the children defeated darkness using their minds and hearts. Don't trust appearances. The sweet candy house and kind-looking old woman hid great danger inside. Parents must protect their children with love and responsibility. Though the father made a terrible mistake by giving in to his wife, he repented, and the family was reunited through forgiveness. In the end, family, kindness, and intelligence will always light the way, even in the darkest forests of life.